Sometimes the shortest path isn't the safest. I took a shortcut through the woods one night, just to save a few minutes, but I didn't come back alone. Something followed me, and it's still haunting me. I hadn't planned to take a shortcut that night. The main road was safer. It was lit by streetlights, lined with houses, and familiar from years of walking it. But I was tired, impatient, and convinced the woods would save me a few precious minutes. That one impulsive decision felt harmless at the time. Just a small detour, nothing to worry about. The town itself was small, surrounded by dense woods that locals mostly avoided after sunset. The trees grew thick, with moss covering the ground and branches stretching overhead like long, crooked fingers. People warned about taking that path after dark. They muttered something about strange things happening there, but I'd always rolled my eyes. It was just a forest, just shadows and stories. I stepped off the paved sidewalk and onto the narrow dirt trail. The moon was barely a sliver in the sky, not much help in the way of light. My phone stayed in my pocket for now, though. My footsteps crunched softly beneath me, but in the quiet of the woods they sounded absurdly loud, like they didn't belong there, like I didn't belong there. The farther I walked, the darker everything became. The ambient noise of the town faded behind me, swallowed by the trees. There were no crickets, no wind, not even the distant call of an owl. Just complete, suffocating silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. It didn't feel peaceful. It felt wrong. About halfway through, I started to realize something strange. Normally, I'd notice broken branches or small animal tracks along the trail, signs of life. But this time, nothing. The forest floor was too clean. There were no disturbances, no footprints. Not even mine seemed to leave a mark. It was as if the woods had wiped itself clean. I pulled out my phone and flicked on the flashlight. The beam was weak, barely piercing through the thick black ahead. Every twist of the shadows made me jump. Each tree seemed to bend the wrong way, as if leaning in just slightly too close. I told myself it was nothing. It was just nerves, just an overactive imagination. Then I heard it, a soft rustling behind me. I froze and spun around to shine my light back the way I came, but there was nothing, just trees. Endless black trees. I listened hard, but the sound had already faded. Still, my heart didn't slow down. I knew I'd heard something. I picked up my pace, not quite running, but walking fast enough to make my breathing uneven. I kept telling myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me, that the rustling could have been anything, a bird, a rabbit. But then it came again, louder this time, and closer. I stopped in my tracks and whipped the flashlight around in a frantic arc. My hands were shaking now. For a split second, the beam caught something up ahead. A figure, maybe? Tall, unmoving, and dark. It was too tall to be an animal, too still to be human. But then it was gone. A chill crawled up my spine like ice water under my skin. I forced a shaky breath and told myself it was a trick of the light, just a tree or a shadow that looked wrong for a second. But deep down, I knew better. The sensation crawling over my skin wasn't fear of the dark. It was the feeling of being watched. The trail twisted sharply, throwing off my sense of direction in an instant. I turned around, trying to retrace my steps, but all the trees looked the same, tall, dark, and unwelcoming. The narrow dirt path had vanished behind me like it had never been there at all. I pulled out my phone, hoping to use the map, but the signal was gone. Just a hollow, no service mocking me from the top corner of the screen. That's when the first pulse of panic began to throb at the base of my skull. Behind me, what had started as the occasional rustle evolved into something more rhythmic, more purposeful. Footsteps. Not animals darting through the underbrush, but measured, deliberate steps. And worst of all, they were matching mine. Each time I stopped, they stopped too. Whoever, or whatever it was playing a game. I didn't dare look back. "Hello?" I finally called out. The forest didn't respond. No voices, no animals, not even an echo, just silence, thick and oppressive. Like the trees themselves were holding their breath. It felt like the woods were absorbing my words, swallowing them whole. Then I heard it, a whisper, so soft, so subtle it almost sounded like wind, but there was no breeze. It slithered through the air like a sigh, brushing past my ear. I didn't catch the words at first, until I realized it was saying my name. Not yelling, not screaming, just whispering, like it already knew me. I froze. No one should know I was here. I hadn't told anyone about taking the shortcut. Hell, I hadn't even planned it. I spun around, flashlight trembling in my grip, cutting through the trees like a weak blade. But the beam revealed nothing, just shadows. So many shadows. Then came the sharp crack of a branch nearby, too close for comfort. The sound jolted me into motion. I turned and ran, instincts taking over, branches whipping at my arms and face as I charged blindly forward. My breath came in gasps, every inhale like broken glass in my chest. No matter how far I ran, the trail didn't seem to change. It just stretched endlessly in front of me like some kind of cruel illusion. I could feel resistance in every step, like I was wading through something thick and unseen. Time felt slippery, unreal. I couldn't tell if I'd been running for 30 seconds or 30 minutes. I tripped, hard. Roots and loose dirt conspired to send me crashing forward. My hand scraped against the forest floor and I could feel the sting of fresh cuts. As I pushed myself up, the whispers returned, stronger now, more urgent. They weren't coming from one direction anymore. They were all around me, overlapping and weaving together like a chant. Through the trees ahead, I spotted it. Light. Dim, flickering, but definitely there. I scrambled toward it, hope flaring in my chest for the first time. Maybe it was a fire, a campsite, a ranger's lantern. Anything human, anything normal. I didn't even care what it was. I just needed it not to be the forest. But the closer I got, the more I realized something was wrong. The glow wasn't steady. It pulsed, faintly, like the beat of a heart. It didn't throw shade the way fire or flashlights should. It wasn't warm. It was alive, but not in any way I could understand. And whatever it was waiting for me. I stumbled out of the woods near the edge of town, lungs burning, legs trembling. The moment I crossed the tree line, it felt like breaching a wall. Like the forest had been holding me in. I collapsed onto the sidewalk, gasping for air. The streetlights buzzed overhead, casting sterile orange pools of light that should have felt comforting, but instead, they seemed foreign, like I'd stepped into a different version of my world, one where everything looked the same, but felt wrong. Before standing up, I dared one last glance over my shoulder. The trees swayed gently, but it was too synchronized, like they were breathing in unison. The forest itself looked alive, watching. The darkness inside those woods didn't just look deep, it looked bottomless. A place that didn't end once you stepped in, only wrapped around you tighter the further you walked. That night I lay in bed, the sheets tangled around me, my heart refusing to slow down. Every creak of the old house made me flinch. Every gust of wind rattling the window sounded like something trying to get in. I told myself I was safe, that I was imagining it. But even my dreams didn't believe me. I woke up more than once, convinced someone had whispered my name. The unease didn't fade with daylight. Over the next few days I began noticing little things. Things that didn't belong. A smooth, flat stone placed neatly on my doorstep. 3 fine scratches along the side of my car, as if something with claws had dragged them lazily along the metal. They were too deliberate to be random, but too subtle to prove anything. I tried to be logical. Maybe kids were messing around, or a stray cat. Maybe I'd kicked that stone myself without realizing it. But the more I tried to explain it away, the more paranoid I became. I started checking locks twice, then 3 times. I left lights on at night, but still, no matter how safe I made my house, the feeling followed me, like something was just barely outside my perception, waiting. Even my phone was acting strange. During calls, static would cut in unexpectedly. Once, mid-conversation, I heard a whisper, not from the person I was speaking to, but layered beneath the noise. I couldn't make out the words, but it felt like someone was repeating the same phrase over and over. I hung up immediately and couldn't bring myself to call back. Then came the tapping, soft and deliberate. One night, just after midnight, it started on my bedroom window. I froze, barely able to breathe. When I pulled back the curtain, there was nothing but empty darkness. No footprints outside, no branches nearby, just glass, and the feeling that someone, or something, had been standing there, staring in. Soon, it wasn't just sounds, it was reflections. I started noticing shapes in mirrors, or the dark screen of my turned-off TV, shapes that didn't line up with my movement. A second shadow, a figure standing a little too close behind me. I'd spin around and find nothing there, but my reflection always seemed slower to follow, like it was hesitating to mimic me. People around me noticed the change. Friends told me I looked tired and distracted. I was constantly turning my head, staring into empty corners of rooms, jumping at every sudden noise. I tried to laugh it off, but they could see the fear in my eyes. I couldn't explain it, and I didn't want to try. Saying it out loud would make it real. I kept telling myself I'd imagined it, that it was stress or lack of sleep or some kind of breakdown. But late at night, lying awake with my ears straining to hear something in the silence, I stopped pretending. Something followed me out of those woods. And whatever it is, it still hasn't let go. Months slipped by, but the presence never fully left. It didn't slam doors or shout. No, it was quieter than that. It was the whisper behind the walls, the chill in the corner of my vision, the weight that settled into my chest when I was alone. It was subtle but relentless, like a shadow glued to my skin. I tried everything I could think of to keep it at bay. Salt lines, crystals, even old rituals I half believed in. I sprinkled salt around the house and placed little charms near the windows, but none of it mattered. It ignored my defenses, slipping through the cracks like smoke, impossible to catch or push away. Sometimes, when the house was silent and the world felt miles away, I'd hear it whisper again. Not words exactly, more like a breathy, sighing sound calling my name from the woods, low and mournful. It wasn't angry or cruel, just patient, like it was waiting for me to notice, waiting for me to let my guard down. In desperation, I moved. I packed up what I could and left that house behind, hoping distance would break the bond. But the feeling followed. It settled in the new place like an uninvited guest. The air grew heavy at night, and sometimes I'd catch that faint, impossible shadow slipping just out of the corner of my eye. I learned to live with the silence, the strange cold spots that seemed to suck the warmth from a room, the faint rustling that happened when no one else was around. The odd creaks and groans of the house weren't from old wood or settling foundations. They were something else, something watching. Friends told me to forget it, to stop letting it consume me. It's just your imagination, they said. But how do you forget when the feeling of being watched is as real as your own heartbeat? How do you move on when the shadows feel alive and patient, like they've been waiting for you long before you ever walked through those woods? Late at night, when everything else is still, I swear I see that shadow standing just beyond my vision, waiting silently. It never steps forward, never fully reveals itself. It doesn't need to. The knowledge that it's there is enough, to unnerve, to unsettle, to remind me that some things don't want to be seen, they just want to be known. I don't know what followed me from those woods. Some kind of spirit? A curse? An echo of something ancient? All I know is it's patient, waiting for the moment I let my guard down, the moment I stopped believing in its presence. That shortcut, what seemed like a harmless path home, is a scar on my life now. It's a reminder that some choices can't be undone, that some places hold on to you long after you leave. Because some things don't stay in the woods, some things follow you home, and when they do, there's no running fast enough or hiding deep enough to escape. I wish I could say it ended when I left the woods behind, but some things don't let go. They linger in the silence, in the shadows, just beyond the edge of sight. If you've ever felt watched when no one's there, maybe you know what I mean. Be careful when you take shortcuts, because sometimes what follows you home is patient, and it never forgets. If you've got your own story about something that shouldn't have followed you, drop it in the comments. And if you want more true horror that sticks with you long after the lights go out, hit subscribe and stay a while.